Kate Olson, and I'm the host of Embrace Change with Kate. And I'm also a life coach, hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, and Reiki master. And I'm here today with Anne Logue, and we're going to have a little soul talk. And we're going to be talking about a topic I love. Anne had a really fun idea. We're going to talk about serendipity and synchronicity. So, hi, Anne. Can you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about what you do? Because I know you wear quite a few different hats.
Hi, Kate. Yeah, it's nice to talk to you. Actually, a lot of the same hats that you wear. So I'm also Reiki master. I'm trained in quantum touch, certified in hypnosis, NLP, and also healing touch. And right now what I'm working on primarily is promoting my book, which is called The Story of the Sun. It just came out in the French version. And so I'm working on trying to get the message out to children, finding ways that they can explore the world around them and make it the best world for them. So
well, I like your sun behind you there.
Thank you. This is a quilt that my girlfriend made. She made it when my book came out. We worked on it together. She lives in Florida, and we wanted to work with a certain designer. His name is Calf Passett, and he has reworked traditional quilt designs with these candy colors. So his colors tend to be very, very bright, and that's what I wanted. So she was nice enough to make this for me. It's one of my favorite possessions.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So this topic that Anne came up with seemed very appropriate because how Anne and I met was kind of a little bit of serendipity or synchronicity. We met 3 years ago at the National Symposium for Personal Development, and that was held at Harvard University. And a whole group of people were there speaking about different topics to do with personal development. And it was kind of serendipitous how we all came together and connected. I've been back a couple of other times to the symposium, and I still feel like that first group of people was kind of a special group. So, and I actually didn't meet Anne until after the symposium, when we all went out for, I guess it was drinks and hors d'oeuvres, because we were sitting at different tables during the symposium. And then we connected over the telephone, and we both went back last year to the Symposium for Integrated Healthcare. So how did you feel about that?
Well, I think the first year, because that was really the first year that it was held, was a very special year because we were all exploring new worlds together, and it was a large group. I think that's one of the reasons why you and I didn't initially connect together, because like you said, we were in different tables. I think there were 4 or 5 tables. So
yeah.
There were a lot of different people there. And as you said, in the social setting, we kind of got to know each other a little bit better and connected, and then went forward to, in relationship from then. I actually liked last year because it was a little bit smaller, and I did feel like the topic was a little bit more my speed, because it did talk a lot about holistic healing and that kind of thing, which I find, close to my heart. That's something that I'm very interested in. But yeah, I think right now what I'm interested in, I've in another group that I'm in, a spiritual group, we get together on a weekly basis, and we've been talking about the Celestine Prophecy, which is kind of one of the, pinnacle books that people have liked. And it's taken me quite a long time to actually read that. I tried it a couple times, but I just finished reading it. I'm reading it again. Now it's becoming a new interest for me. And that's where the idea of synchronicity, or whatever you want to call it, has come to me, because that's the first insight that they introduce in that book. So it's something that I've been playing around with and having a lot of fun just kind of exploring.
Yeah, it's interesting, the difference between serendipity and synchronicity. I love them both. I mean, whenever something good happens, doesn't matter whether it was accidental or part of the flow of the universe. But it's interesting how you can bring more of both of those into your life. And is that kind of what the Celestine Prophecy is about?
Well, the Celestine Prophecy has 8 insights, and each one of them explores a different kind of element of kind of psychic or intuition, those kind of things that both you and I are interested in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're kind of paying attention, it's really interesting how you notice those things happening. Like, I had a day like that today. Today was just a really perfect day for me. It's really pretty. The weather is great here, and we've had, at the end of the winter in the East Coast, that's really nice to have a sunny, warm day. And I was scheduled to work today, so I was going to be working until 4 o'clock and then have this talk with you. So I was going to have a pretty tight schedule, but my work got canceled. And then there was a meditation group that was supposed to take place, and that got canceled. So I had the time that I needed to just kind of, have space to think about things and explore the ideas that you and I were going to talk about, which really made it nice for me.
Great.
Yeah, the day flowed very nicely.
It's a beautiful day here too, so. Yeah,
we're finally at the turning point, I think, where the weather is starting to cooperate a little bit more, which is nice. We both had a lot of snow in our respective places. But I've just really enjoyed kind of thinking about all the different coincidences, or whatever you want to call them. And I think I was sharing with you in another conversation something that happened to me as a result of just a lot of coincidences in my life. So, and it seems like such a silly little incident, but I was looking for someone to do my hair. And I had a hard time finding somebody that I was happy with. So I was in Michael's craft store one day, and there was a woman there that I liked her hair. So I started talking to her and asking where she got her hair done. And she told me that she went to this hair salon called Tangles, and it was in Gilbertsville. And Gilbert, my daughter-in-law's maiden name is Gilbert, so that made an impression on me. So she gave me the phone number, and I put it in my wallet, and I kept it for a little while. And then as time went on, I decided I was going to go and get my hair cut there. So I went and I met the people, and I liked them. So I decided I was going to go again. And the second time that I went, I had just had an incident with fraud on my credit card. And I got a new credit card, and the security code was the same number as my house number growing up. So I was kind of aware of that, thinking about that now. I guess that was a coincidence, but it was something unusual. So I kind of paid attention to that. And that day, going to the hair salon, which was a little distance away, it seemed like every street that I had to turn down had some kind of significance to me. So by the time I got to the hair salon, I felt very, very opened. And just not, I wasn't really thinking in my head like how we usually do of like, I have to do this and then I have to do that. I just was very opened because all of these coincidences that kind of opened me up to, well, gee, I wonder what this is about. It seems like a message. So when I got to the hair salon, I started talking to the person that was doing my hair. And we were talking about an incident that happened after my brother had passed away. And I was relaying kind of an interesting event that happened when I felt that my brother had tried to communicate with me. And so she told me a similar experience that she had. She's also an artist, and she has a studio in her home. So she was home by herself, and she was working on a piece of stained glass that she was trying to prepare. And she ran out of glue. She needed a glue stick. So she called up her mom, who lived next door to her, and she asked her mom if she could borrow some glue. And her mom said, sure, of course, come over. You know, actually, you can have all the glue because I don't use it anymore. So she went over to her mom's house and got the glue, and they had a nice little chat. And then she came back over to her house, and she continued to work on the stained glass project that she was doing. And she had a connecting door from her studio into her kitchen. And she started to hear a very light tapping up on that door. So she looked around and couldn't figure out what that was from. And she has 2 dogs that were sleeping soundly at her feet. So she didn't think there was anybody in the house. But then as time went on, the tapping got to be more and more, a stronger and stronger tapping. So she went into the kitchen to look out the window to see if there was anybody there. And there was a man that was going past her front door, the kitchen door, and he was walking very straight ahead and not looking from one side to the other, walking towards her mom's house. And she couldn't make any sense of it because the dogs were still asleep. But then she got a call from her dad, and her dad said, you've got to come over right away. Something's happening with mom. So she went over, and her mom had just passed away from a massive heart attack. And they really hoped that they would be able to revive her, but they weren't able to. So that was the end of her mom's life. But just by that coincidence of not having a glue stick, she was able to spend some time, and that was the last conversation that she had with her mom. So as time went on her mom's side, there was a system of learning that was called powwow, which I think is Germanic in its roots, and it has to do with certain spiritual practices. And it was supposed to be passed down from the male of the female, the male of the family, the father, to his third daughter, or from the mother of the family to the third son. It had to go from like one sex to the other. And so it had skipped her mother's generation because there wasn't a third son. And they had books that related to this, but the books had been hidden so that no one would abuse the knowledge in the books. And she knew that they were there, but she had never been allowed to see them. So as time went on, after her mother passed, her father showed her a picture that her mom had in her wallet, and it was a picture of her grandfather. And when she looked at the picture of her grandfather from her mother's wallet, it was the same man that was going past her house just prior to her mother's death. So it's coming to get his daughter. And for a lot of people, that might seem like a kind of a strange event, but anyway, so as time went on, she was interested in the books, but she knew that her father had protected the books and would not let her have the books. And so she never broached the subject with him. And then one day she went into a little boutique store where she had some of her artwork And there was a woman there that did tarot cards, and she spoke to her right away, and she said, I want to talk to you. You have to come over and talk to me right away. And she said, just when I saw you, I knew that I had a message for you. And my message is that you need to get the books right away. And she said, I don't know what the books are, but I got this message and I know it's for you. And of course, the hairdresser knew what that was about. She knew what the books were, but she knew that her father had the books and probably would not give them to her. So when she got home, her father had called her and he said to her, so when do you want them? So he knew right away at the same time, through coincidence, synchronicity, whatever you'd like to call it, serendipity, that was the time for her. So she has been studying the books, and she's found that a lot of the information in those books has been information that she has gotten intuitively, and it's just expanded on her knowledge. So to me, that was like a pretty interesting relationship to develop out of just meeting somebody randomly at
Yes,
a craft store.
yeah, and that is actually an example of synchronicity, because it was something that she had put out into the universe,
Right.
and it was coming to her through other people, through events. So when it's serendipity, it's something that, that we weren't expecting, weren't thinking about, that just happens. They call it a happy accident. It's, something, okay, you weren't even planning a vacation. You weren't even thinking about a vacation, and you win a trip. And then you think, wow, I really needed this vacation. This is a happy accident.
Well, I have an example of that actually too. So I have another kind of situation, kind of random. So during the winter, it got very cold here, and it was below zero a number of nights. And we have a finished basement, and the basement has a pipe that goes out to the patio for the hose. It's on the outside wall. And we've been in this house for 10 years and never had any problem. But one night, because the temperature went down so low, the pipe burst and it leaked all over the basement. So we had to replace the floor in the basement. We had to cut the hole in the wall and get the pipe replaced, and had to do new drywall and get it painted, and got to be quite a process. So my husband misunderstood the insurance adjuster, and what his understanding was that I had to replace, there was a rug that got damaged because it got wet. So in order to get reimbursed for the rug, what his understanding was that I had to get a new rug and get the receipt for it in order to get the money for the rug. So I was intent on getting a rug similar to the one that I had, and I wanted to go back to the store that I got it, which was in a different state. It was in New Jersey. And so I decided on a Sunday afternoon, it was kind of a rainy Sunday, that I was going to go to New Jersey and look for this rug so that I could get reimbursed for it. So I set out, and I went through this little town. It's a really cute little country town, and they have an adorable country store. It's called the Carversville General Store, the Carversville Kitchen. And I decided I was going to stop and have a cup of coffee and a sticky bun on my way, just to make it a nice trip. So I stopped there, and it looked different. The store looked different. I think it's under new ownership. And they have a little post office. It's very quaint and tiny. And they have a section that is dedicated to different artists. And so they had some artwork there, but not as much as they usually have. So I mentioned that to the woman when I was buying my coffee. And I said, oh, it doesn't seem like you have as much artwork as usual. And she said, well, we have different artists every month. So it just depends on who the artwork is for, you know, who's doing it. And so I was thinking of a friend of mine that does fantastic paintings, and I thought maybe she would like to display there. So I asked her if I could leave my name. So I left my name and my phone number and my website. And I was thinking about my friend, who's a you know, painter. So the next day I went, you know, continued on my errand. And then the next day I got a call from someone, and she said, well, I got this message that you had been in the store yesterday, and I looked at your website and I really, really liked your book. I would be interested in having you display there, which was not my intention at all. And so what has ended up happening is I'm going to do a little book reading and an event for children there in June once they finish the renovation. Now, that wasn't anything I had in my mind at all. I mean, first of all, I was on another mission altogether. I wasn't thinking about that at all. And once I was presented with this situation, I thought of my friend rather than myself in this situation. I wasn't thinking of my work. So it seemed like a pretty interesting situation, that a happenstance, if you want to call it.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both there, a little bit of serendipity and a little bit of a synchronicity, because you've kind of put out into the universe that you know, want to, you know, have more opportunities to sell and present your book. So it's out there. But that was...
I wasn't looking for it that day,
you
though.
weren't looking for it at that.
I wasn't trying to promote my book in that sense.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I could think of lots of different circumstances like that myself, too. It seems like things like that have been happening on a fairly regular basis for me since about 2013. And I think that's because that's when I had a big shift in my life. I decided that I was going to, you know, change things up and start doing what I loved. And also, I changed my attitude about myself in a lot of different ways. And I think that's part of getting that synchronicity and serendipity going in your life, kind of getting in flow with the universe. I think you first have to get in flow with yourself.
I think that's definitely part of it. So like what you're talking about is you did a whole energy shift, which had to do with your own internal alignment. And when your own internal alignment got shifted, then you probably let go of some of the things that were blocking you, that, you know, allowed you to open up to other experiences. And I think that's a very, very valid point, where the synchronicity, or whatever we're calling it today, that really can come into our lives in a much more, you know, easier way, because obviously the more that we're holding on to things so tightly, then we don't allow the flow of energy to come into us. And as you and I are both work with energy, Reiki, and I do healing touch as well. The flow of energy is really important in any kind of healing and any kind of, you know, empowerment, because that's what really allows us to have the benefit of the universal energy that can come our way. So yeah, that's a very big element for sure.
Yeah, I started at that time. I took a trip. My son moved back to Wichita, and I drove back there with him, and then I went to see my aunts in Oklahoma, and then I just decided on the way back I would go to Las Vegas, where I'd never been before. And on that trip, because of that trip, I decided that all those things that were on my someday list, I was going to start doing them.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a decision that I was going to start traveling, and I love music. So that next year, 2014, I went to 17 concerts.
Wow.
I went to see a lot of those people that I'd always wanted to see. I love art, but I hadn't been doing any. So I started doing art. I love writing. I decided I was going to, and I still haven't really gotten that one going as much as I would like to, but I am, writing, and I have 3 book ideas and an idea for a children's book. But so far, the blogs are about as far as I've gotten.
Those are time consuming in themselves, though. Yeah, that's
yeah. Besides
commitment.
getting,
Yeah,
I have gotten a couple of articles published, but the books are next. And it's just doing things that I love, kind of getting back in touch with that, because I think day-to-day life kind of gets us off track, and pretty soon we're doing things we don't like doing and becoming someone we don't like being. And that kind of puts us out of sync with ourselves,
right.
And out of sync with the universe, really, the energy, our chi.
Well, when we're not living an authentic life, then obviously we are creating blocks for ourselves, though, because we're not doing the things we really enjoy doing. And I think it's when we're doing the things that we enjoy doing, that's usually because those are the things that are gifts for us, sometimes when you're learning a different discipline, then there's work that's involved in it, but it's bringing you to the culmination of something that you enjoy. So that's worth it. But yeah, that's true. I think trying to stay in that flow where we're doing things that we really enjoy makes our lives so much happier. And that's when you live in the present, and that's where you live in that joyful place. That's for sure.
Yes, and I think that's what brings more of that, what we're calling synchronicity and serendipity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you are paying more attention to when you're living authentically, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Yes. So you notice, I mean, maybe there's a lot of opportunities going on around you all the time, and you're just missing a lot of them because you're not paying attention, because you're focused on whatever.
Well, I think the thing is too, if you're not in a happy place, then you kind of get numb to stuff. And that kind of numbness prevents you from realizing, oh, this is an opportunity. I think that's another thing. I just had a conversation before you and I started talking with a friend of mine, and I was working on a project with him, and it didn't pan out the way that we had hoped it to. And I was very disappointed that I couldn't help him in the way that I had thought I was going to be able to. And he said, well, don't worry about that, because life is an interesting journey. We never really know where it's going to go. And when you kind of take that, we have such rigid plans of how things are supposed to work out. When you kind of release it from that rigid way of thinking, then a lot of opportunities can happen. But once you're just so dedicated to it has to be this way, and this is what we want to accomplish, or this is my goal, then you really are putting a cap on it, because you're saying that this is the only way that it can be good. I know. Yes. When I learned Reiki, my teacher brought up an interesting point. When people say, well, I really want to win. I want a lot of money. I'm going to go play the lottery. Well, there's a lot of ways that money can come to you besides the lottery. I mean, so you're really limiting yourself when you say that. But that's not what the intention is. The intention is for abundance. So by opening yourself up to things, then you really do bring those opportunities into you, and you bring your appreciation of them too.
Yes, so kind of put the intention out there, but let go of the outcome, you know, like be ready to accept what does come. There's an affirmation that before I got into any of the stuff, any of the teachings, any of the energy and all of that, I had a friend who was into it before I was. And she used to give me this affirmation to say, and it was something like, all good things in abundance are coming my way. This is my intention, and you would say whatever it was. And this or something better is coming.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes
that's a good way to frame it, definitely. So that's like part of what NLP teaches you, is like when you're looking at an experience, a lot of times an experience can seem difficult or challenging, and then you reframe it and see some of the positive aspects of it. Like I worked for a lot of years for Sharing Plow, which is a pharmaceutical company. And when a drug comes out on the market, they have an intention of what it's supposed to heal, but then there's also a secondary gain, the secondary thing. And there's been quite a lot of drugs that have been marketed under something other than what it was initially developed for. And that's true of our life experiences as well. I mean, sometimes something seems like so detrimental to what we're trying to achieve, and yet we realize that without that experience, we wouldn't have gotten to another place that was really an opening for us to achieve something that we wanted. So it is interesting. A lot of it is interpretation and perception. Yeah.
And sometimes there is actually something bigger or better than what we have imagined. When I was in sales, there was this saying by one of the great sales teachers, Bob Moad, if you've heard of him, I don't know. He said, most of us don't aim too high and miss. Most of us aim too low and hit.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes we could actually do, be, or find something bigger than what we have imagined.
Very true. Very true. For sure. Yeah, like there's a quote, I don't know, I probably couldn't find it right at this moment, but it was really wonderful. It was by a woman who was trying to be the first basketball, and basketball, what is it? It's not NFL, it's NBA.
WNBA, I think.
Yeah, and she had such a wonderful quote, but I'm not gonna say it. I can't remember what it was now. I just looked at it this morning too. I'm sorry, that's gonna ruin it. Something about aiming for the sky though. So
yeah, there's been a lot of people who have actually, you know, set out to do one thing, but they ended up, you know, doing something else that was, you know, amazing.
Well, that's true. I mean, like I started out really doing the energy work, and then I ended up with my little children's book, and that's been so fun for me. That's been quite a learning experience. I feel so much like it's like having a child, because there's stages that you go through. And in the very beginning, you're just so excited that the book got published, and you just feel like, oh, this is wonderful. But then just like a child, you know, then you're not sleeping through the night, and then the child is teething, and then the child won't eat. And then there's all these different stages. So there's all the pain of it as well. And we learn through all of that. I mean, just like a mother would, we learn through all those stages with our creative work. So it is a process, and it is an interesting process, and each stage that we're introduced to brings us to a different path. So it's
Yes,
always fun.
it's like, okay, I got to doing this today comes from my radio show, which came
Right.
from me being afraid to speak in front of groups and deciding that I would go to that, Harvard
The symposium, yeah.
symposium and that I would actually speak, which I wasn't going to.
But that's really where I noticed you, because I remember when you did speak, you were quiet in that group. And then when you spoke, it was such a quiet kind of subtle power that you had. It was very impressive. And it made me want to get to know you better, because a lot of the things that you said really touched me. I mean, they were very insightful. And so that was really a good segue for you in your career, because I'm sure that helped you a lot in getting the message that you're trying to get out to people.
Well,
verbalize it.
it's been a journey, and it's still continuing.
For sure.
I currently am trying to, on my radio show, I'm trying to stop saying "and so," because I do that continuously. But I'll get there.
It's a learning curve, for sure.
Yes.
Definitely. That's a learning curve.
And then, the Creative Friends group that I have.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, that started with me trying to help somebody with their Kickstarter.
Oh, okay.
And I had no intention of starting a group. It happened by accident, but I love that group, and so many people, love it.
For sure.
So it's actually one of the, I guess, positives of Facebook that for me is having that group of creative people and seeing all the beautiful things that they create.
Yeah, I've enjoyed a lot of the artwork that's on that Facebook page.
Yeah.
Well, that's very serendipitous. I mean, that whole thing. I mean, it's like me and my friend. I was trying to promote her, and it ended up being for me. I mean, that wasn't my intention, but I got so much. It's really been fun. Actually, I tried to get her into this spot too, and she's too busy this year. She has too many art shows, so it's not available.
Well, that's always good. I mean,
so yeah, well, busy is good. Yeah. But I mean, there'll be an opportunity in the future. So like now I'm getting to have this relationship with the woman that is running this. So I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for her to have a place next time. But it's very interesting how it unfolds, and how one thing kind of begets another thing. And a lot of times it's not necessarily our intention, like in your Creative Friends group, that we break that to be, but it's just the growth of an idea, and it's allowed. I think that's one of the important things too that we're talking about, is the environment of allowing, the environment of allowing that opening to happen, and not judging it, and not putting restrictions or limitations on it, just letting it be. And once it can grow to what it's supposed to be, it's just, then you just acknowledge it and you say, wow, like I didn't think that was going to happen.
Yes.
It's just been so beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the group kind of grew organically, and who knew?
Right? Exactly. For sure. That's so cool though. I mean, it's so nice. It's just really nice. I think that's what's nice about being around creative people, is because when you're brainstorming with creative people, so many good ideas come out, and you can really see. I mean, I'm always interested in being around people that have innovative ideas, that like to push the limits a little bit, and like to explore things that are not run of the mill, because that's where you start growing. That's where you challenge yourself. If you're always staying in the same role and the same rut, you know, then you're really not growing. And so that's so nice to explore new things and try different opportunities and be with different people. I mean, that's what makes life so fun, and an adventure, which is really is.
Yes, I actually believe that everybody is creative, but it just has to come out um, in whatever way, you know, they enjoy and
Mm-hmm.
whatever their gifts are. So,
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about it, a scientist, which I wouldn't normally have thought of as creative, but they certainly are. I mean, they're creating, like you think about Einstein or somebody like that, and an incredible mind, and how he created, through his thought processes, he created the opportunity to develop these new ideas that have really touched all of our lives in some way or another. So, yeah, it's interesting.
yes, I have one of the things that I did in my exploring different avenues was I went back to school for programming, and I found out through that experience that I wasn't a programmer.
Okay.
But I also found out that programming is very creative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people don't think of it as creative, but it's kind of like solving problems. And it's a very creative process. And, you know, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't know that. I had
Well, I think,
some,
yeah,
I,
that's an interesting thing. I think when I took Healing Touch, I was required to read quantum physics, which I thought would have been the opposite of what I was interested in. And yet, again, like you, when I read that, you realize, wow, this is something that's so fascinating. I mean, it just opened a lot of doors for me that I would never have really thought to be interested in. It teaches you a kind of logic and the way that new ideas develop. It's really fascinating, actually. But
yeah.
would never have thought to do that on my own.
Well, I still have not discovered this, but I've heard that math is very creative. That actually you know, math underlies music. Um, you know, I haven't seen that connection myself, but I've heard that is true. So interesting.
Well, I think the thing that the connection that I have, the kind of the bridge on the numbers part is that, you know, when you're into numerology, which is kind of more my ilk rather than math, but numerology is fascinating. I've had somebody do my numerology chart, and it's all about numbers, and yet what it brings out is all very personal things about different tendencies and patterns that you have in your life, and actually probably purpose and things that you're intended to do with your life, and it's all in the numbers. So it isn't math per se, but it is numbers. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, when you look back at Pythagoras and different people that were instrumental in our understanding of the universe, a lot of it does have to do with math. So
Yes, as I said, I just haven't found that creative connection
right.
yet, but I'm sure
Understandable.
it is there.
Right.
I know we could talk about this for hours,
Definitely.
but we were meaning to have this end up. Actually, we're a little bit over time.
Yeah.
So, is there something that you'd like to say as a, you know, as a last?
Well, the only thing that I would really say as a takeaway, I guess, really is just the allowing. I mean, just like try to be open to the opportunities that present themselves and see where they take you, because we never really know where they're going to be. And sometimes the things that are disguised as challenges or